I'm Eric Elnes, and I'm I serve a church in Omaha, Nebraska, and also I'm the host of Darkwood Brew, an online interactive television program. I'm probably the least. I and my team are probably the least qualified to be standing here before you today, but I count that as a note of hope, actually, and perhaps some of my story will reveal that. But I'm not just saying this with some sense of false humility either. Actually, our researcher, Catherine Reckless, described what we're doing at Darkwood Brew fairly accurately as well, pretty doggone accurately. In fact, there was one extremely accurate statement I want to read to you, which you might find depressing, but accurate, and hopefully by the end of this talk, hopeful. She said, after doing all this research, the funny thing about the Darkwood Brew project and the people who run it is that not one of them is particularly savvy about new media. Most are not early adopters, and even those with iPhones and iPads admit to barely scratching the surface of their capacity. They are on Facebook, but they mostly use it to promote or connect with Darkwood brewers, and none of them tweet or use Meetup or check in at Foursquare. Quote, "I'm really quite media averse," Elnes confesses to me somewhat sheepishly. Quote, "People perceive me as a big tech head, but I am highly resistant. My first reaction to new technology is to be skeptical and swear I will never use it. But I end up thinking about it so much because I'm so resistant to it that then I often end up converted and using it, and people think I'm an early adopter." In 1997, I told my father after a two-evening debate, over him encouraged me to use multimedia in Christian worship. Dad, bottom line, hell will freeze over before I ever use multimedia in Christian worship. In the year 2000, as I stood speaking at the first ever international symposium on the use of multimedia in Christian worship in Ulsan, Korea, I asked my host if I could make a telephone call back home, if I could find a payphone. And he said, "Oh, no, use this." And he took from around his neck what I thought was a pendant. Turned out to be the smallest cell phone I'd ever seen. This is the year 2000, still pretty much the smallest telephone I've ever seen. And he said, "Here, use this." And I said, "Oh, no, I can't do that. This is an international call. It'll be very expensive." He said, "Oh, no. This telephone is wirelessly connected in the sanctuary here to the internet, and your voice will be going over the internet. The call will be for free." I thought he was just yanking my chain, but it turned out to be absolutely true. And I was absolutely in a state of shock. And for a long time, I thought about why is it that the South Koreans were so far ahead of the wealthiest, most technologically advanced country in the world. I mean, this is the year 2000 they're doing this. We wouldn't even have even a glimmer of that technology here until about 2006, right? And the more I reflected, I realized it was their poverty that played a fundamental role, almost more than anything else, because the South Koreans could never invest in the traditional landlines. They didn't have the money for it like we did. And so we were very slow to change because we were so heavily invested in the old technology. But when the Korean economy perked up just a little bit, they just simply dipped their feet into where the latest technology was and rode that out and became that much more advanced. Skip ahead to 2006. I was walking across the country from Phoenix, Arizona to Washington, D.C. with a group from Crosswalk America. We had been tired of how most of the impression of Christianity in the nation was created by televangelists and news broadcasts about the weirdest, wildest incarnations of Christianity there is. And we wanted to raise awareness that Christianity isn't just simply what you see on TV. There are much more progressive and open and inclusive forms of it. And we walked across the country on a platform using the Phoenix affirmations, which were 12 kind of points of progressive Christianity as kind of our walking points. We kind of went out with a Bay of Pigs mentality. We thought that like we would just simply raise a flag, and everybody who had been so oppressed by religion, the way it's been used, would just rise up and say, we need to have a conversation about religion and faith in the country. Well, we got to Kansas City, which was the halfway point of their walk, and we'd had 17 seconds of national publicity on the TV, and we could make the front page of any newspaper that was like 400 people, town and below. But the day we walked through Kansas City, religion made the front page of the newspaper, the Kansas City Star, that day. But it wasn't progressive Christians walking for peace, justice, and inclusion, etc. It was Jimmy Baker's been out of prison for 2 years now, and he's doing really well in Branson. We thought, what do you have to do to just stand up naked in the public square, or what? The next day we were walking into Missouri, and I don't know what it is about Missourians. Maybe, are anybody from Missouri? I'd like, okay. Well, no, you must be rich, because we found more loose change along the freeway in Missouri than any other country, any other state in the country. The first day we were walking, I picked up all kinds of change, but one time I bent down to pick up what I thought was a quarter, but it was actually like a slug, like you used to put in a Coke machine, except it had a question stamped in the metal. It said, "What moves you?" And I thought, that's weird. But then I thought, well, I've got the rest of the afternoon to think about that question. It's a kind of interesting question. So I thought, what is moving me? Well, one of the things that was moving me was how much the message that we were broadcasting was resonating hugely at the grassroots. Whenever anybody knew that we were walking and actually took time to gather the gatherings that were taking place, people got wildly excited, and that the loneliness quote was excellent. I mean, people were saying, "So I'm not alone. So I'm not crazy." So there are people who believe this way. And we found that in the most conservative rural areas of Texas to urban areas, etc. So that was really moving me. But the other thing that was moving me was that we couldn't get a doggone bit of publicity in the secular media, and the realization that we can't, as progressive, quote-unquote, Christians, we can't rely on the secular media to tell our story for us in the public square. They're just fundamentally uninterested, especially if you're not willing to bash the quote-unquote other side, but actually only talking about the positive pieces that are exciting you about your faith. So we have to become the media somehow. And I'm just kind of turning this in my mind, and suddenly I was reminded, but I'm thinking, well, how could we ever compete? We don't, in the more progressive mainline sphere, we don't have very much money compared to the televangelists with their billions of dollars of technology investment in global satellite networks and 1,500 radio stations of the 11,000 in the country and so forth. How could we possibly become the media and have a voice out there that could stand even a chance of not being just completely overwhelmed? And then I remembered that experience in Korea, South Korea. It's like, wait a minute. Maybe our poverty, our relative poverty, in terms of availability of resources to do anything like this, could actually work for us. Because there's this thing called the internet. And just 2 days before I'd walked into Kansas City on NPR, there was a newscast about Amazon.com launching the very first ever television program that only streamed over the internet. Because video technology had gotten good enough and internet technology to stream seamlessly video. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. I remember getting so excited, I ran down the hill. I just walked up to meet up with my fellow walkers saying, I've seen the future, I've seen the future. we could actually become the media using the internet to actually create something. And because it's the internet, we could stream it way cheaper than broadcast television could ever even dream. And yet our platform would be the world, not just simply a local area television network. And maybe we could even make it interactive. Anyway, skip forward to make a lot of developments short. That was 2006. Now this is 2010, and in my church and countryside, we are looking for ways to resource our small group ministry. And we built this vast small group ministry at our church. We have 20 small groups that parallel the worship series, just going a little bit deeper than in the sermon. And what we found was that if people were wildly excited about it and really into it, as long as it was kind of like talking about, like maybe if there was a book founding it. We studied the Phoenix Affirmations for a half a year in small groups, and everybody's like really excited. They signed up for the next small group, which was another 6 months study of the book of Luke. But we had a problem in that nobody wanted to lead the 6 month Bible study on the book of Luke. They all wanted to participate, but they didn't want to lead it. We're like, well, why? Like, well, far be it from us to lead a Bible study. I mean, we're not scholars. And so we said, well, we'll give you the best commentary ever written. How's that? No. So then we finally flew the author of the commentary out, and he and I taped 10 minutes apiece talking about every chapter of the book of Luke. Said, okay, we got a DVD now for you, too. Total game changer. They were all like, okay, sign me up, I'll lead. They felt the confidence then, and they all used it in their group, and they had a great experience with that. So then I realized, okay, well, every time we want to do Bible, we're going to have to, which we want to do a lot, we're going to have to like create some DVD to give our people confidence. Well, I'm trying to figure out, well, how could we do that on my time schedule and all this, and money, and all this. Anyway, to make a very long story short again, I remembered that idea from the walk about becoming the media, and what we did was we started a third worship service at Countryside Church, which was going to be kind of this worship service slash talk show slash spiritual gatherings slash internet interactive thing that we never could quite wrap our heads around, but we thought we could do. And then we figured that if we do this, that we could actually edit that down into like a 20-minute chunk that we could actually press onto a DVD and give to our small groups. And that's what we ended up doing was, and now this did cost us some money. We had to get, we got an outside grant. We put in a web studio at Countryside Church, and we hold this thing that combines ancient Christian mystical practice based on Lectio Divina and other contemplative practices with modern interactive web technology, jazz, arts, biblical scholarship, and people who join us from around the world via Skype video and chat. And we do something, and we create this thing. This happen. It's not, you can't really describe what it is. That's why we call it Darkwood Brew, because you think, what's Darkwood Brew? Well, I guess I got to go and find out. But once you experience it, you step into a world that is a bit different than you expect. You step into a world that into yourself, that's within yourself, and also a world where you're connecting with people you may not ever meet because they're in Australia or in Germany or someplace. And you explore your interior world, you explore your faith world, and you explore the world with other people using that technology. I kind of think about, if you step back 500 years and you look at the Reformation, what would happen? How would the Reformation have been different if Luther and those folks could televise it? And even better, what if they would have had the internet? So it's not just simply broadcasting their wisdom out, but actually they were inviting the world to join the conversation. This time, I mean, would the Reformation have been different then? I mean, you would have probably still had these classic fathers of the Reformation, white males and so forth, but would you have also had females that had risen up through that were extremely well known? Would you have had people of color? Would you have had different ethnicities and cultural diversity? And also, would it be centered around just simply a few individuals, or would actually whole congregations be starting to rise up? Well, this time, the revolution is being televised, and there aren't just simply 2 or 3 or 4 major figures. There are hundreds of them being lifted up through Darkwood Brew, and this time congregations and house groups and individuals are being invited not simply to watch the Reformation unfold, but to become a part of it, to interact with it, to move it ahead, absolutely. And that's what we find happening. To give a kind of a real-world example of how that's happening at Darkwood Brew, and how this also, it's not just about changing the world, but changing your local situation. In March of this last year, a number of us were successful in adding LGBT persons to the city of Omaha's non-discrimination ordinance in hiring. So you can't hire or refuse to hire or fire someone based on sexual orientation or expression. And that was great, a great victory. But right almost as soon as that happened, a number of large churches organized themselves to create a petition drive to take that addition off of the ordinance. And they were very organized about it, and all they needed was 11,400 signatures to get it on, to put it on the public ballot. They started organizing in almost immediately after the ordinance passed. And then by November, they were ready to get out with the petition drive in force. Well, seeing this coming, we realized we were in for what could probably be a very nasty fight between Christians in Omaha, people who are just kind of bashing each other on both ends. And we thought, a nasty fight is like the last thing we really need over this issue. How could we step in and raise the level of conversation and make it a positive thing, and really through encouraging people to support LGBT equality, actually offer the joy of it, not simply bashing the people who are on the other side of it, but actually offer the joy. And so we created a series that started at the end of December called For the Love of God, Civil Conversation on the Bible and Homosexuality. And we advertised that through all the social media channels we could, and also did some print advertising. And we really made and we partnered with clergy from different churches also, and we held this 6-week series in which we were able to bring like the best people in the whole world to talk about this stuff, because we have Skype. People come easily; they readily say yes. So we had people like Bishop Gene Robinson, the first openly gay bishop in the Episcopal Church. We had people like Justin Lee, who's just got this book that's selling like hotcakes, who's deep in the evangelical world, talking about his coming out as a gay Christian, but offering a deep view from inside evangelicalism. We had a biblical scholar from Princeton Seminary. We had a biblical scholar from Seattle Pacific, all kind of weighing in, offering their story. And then we also brought in local people for half an hour after Darkwood Brew to kind of feed back on this. And so what happened was Omaha started watching the revolution. And not just watching, but actually participating through the live chat if they weren't coming to the coffee house, or just simply packing the coffee house to participate there as well. And just 2 Fridays ago, we learned the news. The petition drive in Omaha failed. They failed to receive the 11,400 signatures they needed, even though it would have been so easy with so many big megachurches. And I'm not claiming that Darkwood Brew was the thing that just made that all happen, because there were a number of really good and sincere efforts and effective efforts that were made to help that. But what I found is that especially on that issue, if you can tell people, you don't have to persuade people that they must be inclusive and open to gay people, for instance. But if you can persuade people that there is not simply one Christian point of view on this, that's enough to make a really significant change. And what we were able to do very cheaply, because we're on the internet and doing what we're doing, was help Omaha understand that there's more than one point of view on this issue. And I'm convinced that because of that, so many people, when they're presented with petitions in their churches, said, no, I don't feel comfortable signing that. And so change happened. This time the revolution is being televised. You can do this because even if you don't have expertise, you can be part of that, creating a web presence. I mean, you heard me read Catherine's assessment. You can be completely averse to technology. You can be not using Twitter and Facebook very effectively at all. You don't have to know anything about camera work and all this, and you can be part of not only tapping into the revolution, but bringing it forward. Thanks.